as we get closer and closer to the fantasy football playoffs, you need to start thinking about what players give you the best chance at winning it all. If you're not first, you're last. And in today's video, I'm bringing you 10 players that you should trade for because they are positioned really well to be league winners when it matters the most. I'm going to go through a bunch of different positions and there will be time codes down below. Starting off with the running back position, Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard is absolutely dominating opportunities in the Tennessee backfield. And look, I know Tajay Spears has been injured, but even before Tajay went down with an injury, he was dominating opportunity here. But let's look, this year, he has 68% of the rushing attempts, 13% target share, and 75% of the team carries inside the 5-yard line. He's being used in the air, on the ground, on the goal line, and few running backs have had the type of usage that Pollard has had in the year 2024. He has a better utilization rate than Derrick Henry and Josh Jacobs, some of the best workhorses in the NFL, currently averaging just under 15 PPR points per game. That's good for 19th in points per game amongst running backs right now. And he has one of the best matchups in championship week in particular. Right, in week 15 of the fantasy season, the Bengals, which is middle of the pack. Same with the Colts in week 16. And then in week 17, when all the marbles are on the table, he's got the Jags, which are the second best matchup for your running back when you adjust for schedule. I definitely think he is going to be one of the best flexes or RB2s on championship winning teams in week 17. All right, let's move on to a name we talked about last week, but I want to continue to emphasize this buy. That is James Conner. Guys, I really think James Conner is going to win a lot of people fantasy leagues this year. I really do. This year, he has 62% of the team rushing attempts, a 10% target share, and 44% of the team carries inside the 5-yard line. Now, to be fair, last week he left with an injury, and that left Trey Benson to get one of those touchdowns, so that kind of skewed those numbers a little bit. But he's currently averaging 14.2 PPR points per game, and when it matters the most, again, that's what this entire video is built around. Yeah, it's great if you get into the playoffs, but let's get the guys that are going to help us win it all. He has the Patriots in week 15, which are the 5th best matchup for your running back. He has the Panthers in week 16, the best matchup for your running back. And then the Rams in week 18, divisional game. These teams are always going at it. So I think James Conner is definitely going to be on a lot of winning teams. All right, let's talk about the Bucs running backs and more specifically Rachaad White, but Bucky Irving in deeper formats. If you're out there in a 14, 16 team type of scenario and you need a flex, you can go get Bucky a little cheap after this game that just happened. But Rachaad White is shaping up to be a very good play in the playoffs. Now, he doesn't have the most impressive utilization, and we'll talk about more running backs on the honorable mentions at the end, but he had 40% of the rushing attempts so far this year. But here's where he comes through, a 13% target share, and that target share is probably going to just keep going up without Chris Godwin. He has had about 40% of the team carries inside the 5-yard line, and here's the deal, right? In week 17, when it matters the most, he has the best matchup for running backs, the Carolina Panthers, number 1 matchup for your running back. And then the week before that, in week 16, in the semifinals, he's got the Cowboys, 6th best matchup for your running back. I just think this guy's going to be on a ton of championship winning rosters. All right, let's move on to the wide receiver position. I think we have a very rare situation here where you can buy superstar veterans who are underperforming that are going to help you win it all. For example, Tyreek Hill. The perfect moment right now to go trade for Tyreek Hill if you believe you're going to be in the playoffs. He's currently averaging a career low 11 PPR fantasy points per game. I mean, that is not what we're used to seeing from Tyreek Hill. And the offense has slightly shifted in Miami to be a little more run-centric with Devon Achane. But you have to ask yourself if you believe this is how they intend to use the best weapon in the NFL for the rest of the season. Do you really think Tyreek Hill is going to be this uninvolved week in, week out? I don't believe that to be true. I still believe that they're going to use him. He's going to be an integral part of the offense moving forward. I mean, guys, he has 1 receiving touchdown on the season. In my opinion, there is absolutely positive regression on the way. And in the playoffs, he has a great mix of neutral game scripts and really good matchups. For example, the Texans, the 7th best matchup when you adjust for schedule in week 15, a game that should be competitive, a game that shouldn't be a blowout either way. Tyreek's going to be needed. How about the 49ers in week 16? Not technically the best matchup, but come on, versus the 49ers, Tyreek's going to be in that game all the way until the very end. That game could go even the extra mile to overtime. These are 2 teams that are going to be competitive. And then in week 17, the Browns, a top 6 matchup for your wide receiver. Again, very rare opportunity to buy a veteran star like Tyreek Hill. And speaking of veteran stars, How about Deebo Samuel? Just like Tyreek Hill, the perfect time to buy a veteran who is underperforming recently. Guys, since the year 2020, Deebo is averaging over 20 points per game without Brandon Ayuk in the lineup. And it is a small sample size, I'll give you that. But right now, he's averaging just under 12 points per game, which would be his lowest points per game since the year 2020. Another wide receiver with only one receiving touchdown. Again, expect positive regression in that area for Deebo Samuel. And in fantasy championship week, a rematch of last year's NFC championship game, right? In week 15, the Rams, 14th. In week 16, the Dolphins. But in week 17, when it matters the most, again, the Detroit Lions, which are the fourth best matchup for your wide receivers. Again, I don't care if I make it to the playoffs. I don't care if I make it to the second round. I'm trying to win the whole damn thing. If you ain't first, you're last, right? Ricky Bobby out here. All right, another name we'll talk about here is Malik the Freak Neighbors, or Leak. What a fun player to watch, man. He has been the absolute definition of elite usage. I mean, genuinely. I don't know that there's a better wide receiver out there from a usage perspective this year. A 37% target share. I don't know how much research y'all do in fantasy football, but a 37% target share is unheard of. And that's what he has as a rookie. He has 50% of his team's air yards. What is happening? He's averaging over 12 targets per game. Are you joking me? I mean, the guy is the definition of elite. There's no other wide receiver with this kind of usage in the NFL right now. And with good matchups, we have seen Malik Neighbors be unstoppable. And he's getting enough targets that even in bad matchups, he has this very, very safe floor, like a 13, 14 PPR point type of floor. And here's the best thing. In the playoffs, I don't think there's a better schedule for your fantasy wide receivers. I'm genuinely saying that right now, and I'm standing by it. In week 15, the Ravens, the best matchup in fantasy right now when you adjust for schedule. How about the Falcons? A top 10 matchup in week 16. How about in week 17, the Colts, a top 9 matchup for your wide receivers? 3 cupcakes on the schedule, and he is going to feast. All right, let's talk about quarterbacks, and I want to throw a wide receiver in here as well. I want to throw the combo of Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans. Now, Baker Mayfield might be dropped because there's going to be a bye week coming up soon and there's no Chris Godwin. So my thought process here is you don't necessarily need to trade for him, but he's a fine tier down candidate at quarterback, or, a buy low if he's really, really cheap. But Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans, I want to go buy these guys right now or pick Baker up if I can in any single league. Even without Chris Godwin, Baker has been cooking for fantasy football. In the last 2 weeks versus Atlanta, he had 3 touchdowns over 24 fantasy points. Then last week versus Kansas City, he takes it to overtime legacy drive. Again, without Mike Evans, without Chris Godwin, the guy is leading this team against Kansas City, one of the best defenses in the NFL, to overtime. No interceptions, no turnovers. He's averaging over 20 rushing yards per game. And again, we'll get Mike Evans back for the playoffs, for fantasy playoffs. Again, go get both of these guys. Guys, for Mike Evans' sake, keep in mind, Mike Evans hasn't had a single season with under 1,000 receiving yards. He's currently at 355 receiving yards. He needs 665 receiving yards to reach that 1K goal. Okay, so he's going to be back in week 12. That's after their bye. He'll have 7 games to get to 1,000, meaning he'll need to average 95 receiving yards per game. And don't bullshit me right now and say they don't care about that. They absolutely care about that. I promise you, he and Baker Mayfield have already had the conversation. Bro, when you're back, don't worry, I got you. We're going to figure this thing out. And Mike has like the perfect schedule to hit this milestone again. Check this out. He has the Giants in week 12, then the Panthers, the Raiders, the Chargers, which are respectable. In the playoffs, he's got Cowboys, and then the Panthers, and then the Saints if you have a week 18 championship, which you shouldn't, but some people out there do. And as far as Baker Mayfield's sake, in the playoffs, he's got the Chargers in week 15. If he just did what he did to the Chiefs, why can't he be a good play versus the Chargers? But in week 16 and 17, the Cowboys, 6th best matchup for your quarterback when you adjust for schedule. And the Panthers, the 3rd best matchup for your quarterback in fantasy football. I think this combo is going to be a potential league-winning combo. All right, we talked about Kyler Murray last week, but I want to talk about him again. And I actually think there's an even better buy low after his dud performance in week number 9. So before week 9, remember, averaging about 18.6 points per game, almost 350 rushing yards in that 8-game span. He was on track for about 730 rushing yards total. And the playoffs is what I'm really, really interested in for a name like Kyler Murray. So the Patriots in round 1, that's fine, middle of the pack. But then the Panthers in week 16 and the Rams in week 12. 2 matchups that are very, very, very juicy. Moving on. If you're out there, this isn't really a trade target, but if you're quarterback needy and this guy's on the waiver wire, go get him for free. Bo Nix. I've been screaming the name Bo Nix from the mountaintops for like 4 weeks now. So if he's out there, he is a legit starting quarterback in fantasy. This year, he's top 5 in rushing yards per game, right behind Jalen Hurts. And after his rough start to his career in weeks 1 to 2, he is really impressed. Guys, weeks 1 to 2, he was averaging about half a touchdown per game rather. Now he's almost up to that 2 touchdown per game mark. He was averaging over 2 turnovers per game. Now he's not even averaging 1 per game. He was averaging about 11 fantasy points per game, now up over 21. He had his best career game in week 8 with 4 total touchdowns. And in the playoffs, he has the Colts, 7th best matchup, the Chargers, and then the Bengals, which are the 5th best matchup against quarterbacks. All right, we're going to talk about tight ends here. The first tight end that you need to buy, and we talked about this last week, hopefully you did it, but TJ Hawkinson. Guys, check this out. And TJ Hawkinson's first game back from the ACL tear, he had a 63% route participation. He had a 12% target share. Wait. I'm gonna explain why that's important. A 19% air yardage share and 25% of the end zone targets. Okay, that seems pedestrian. He played 45% of the snaps, people. He played 45% of the snaps and had a 12% target share, had a 25% end zone target share. I mean, what are we talking about? And in the playoffs, he has 3 top 12 matches with the Bears, who are 11th, the Seahawks 7th best matchup, and the Packers the 4th best matchup. And all of those games should be hella competitive. You got to get you some TJ Hawkinson. And the last tight end we'll talk about here is Jake Ferguson. I think Dak Prescott will be back for the fantasy playoffs. We'll have to monitor that. But regardless, he's safe with a backup even. Here's his schedule in the playoffs. The Panthers, who are the best matchup. The Bucks, who are the 3rd best matchup. And then in the last game, the Eagles, not technically a good matchup there. All right, we're going to finish off with some honorable mentions. These are other trade targets that I really loved. I've either talked about them in previous weeks, or I just didn't have the time to kind of fit them into this video because we only have a certain amount of time. So in Superflex leagues, Will Levis. I do think he'll be the starter for this team when he's healthy, and I would really encourage you to go look at the Titans' schedule in the playoffs because it's about as good as it gets. Breece Hall, who we talked about last week, love his schedule. I still believe in him. Monty and Gibson, those Lion running backs, they've got a great schedule in the playoffs, and they're both going to be very reliable starts. Wide receivers like DJ Moore, Jaden Reed, Calvin Ridley, Jacoby Myers. We loved talking about Jacoby Myers last week. I wanted to talk about him again, but I wanted to get some more options in there. Tucker Kraft, David Njoku, and Trey McBride. Trey McBride, you're going to have to pay a premium for, but he's got a great schedule as well. All right, I appreciate y'all for being here with me. We did a test on this video last week, and you guys loved it. Let me know if you still love it, if you still want me to do it weekly. And here's what I'll say. If you have a question this week in fantasy, check out the pinned comment. You can reach me at any time on our Flock Fantasy website. That comment down below, the pinned one, will take you directly there. And the last thing I'll say is if you don't have a free account on Flock Fantasy yet, definitely go get you one. flockfantasy.com/land. If you use the promo code LAND, L-A-N-D, at sign up and get a free account, you get the expert consensus rankings for free, the My Team Analyzer for free, and the trade calculator for free, just as a thank you from us. I appreciate you guys. Again, I don't care if I make the playoffs. I care if I win the whole damn thing. That's what matters. That's what legacies are made of. Let's go win some championships this year. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, L-A-N-D, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.